My name is Julie Enzer. I am so happy to welcome you to the Sinister Wisdom launch of Sinister Wisdom 128 Trans Feminisms. We are going to have a great evening here. Before we begin, as is our custom, I spend a moment for a land acknowledgement. We are all around the United States and around the world. We are truly an international gathering this evening, as you will see. Many of us on occupied, unceded land. I am in what is now Dover, Florida, traditional homelands and territories of the Seminole. Please insert into the chat your location and acknowledge the land on which you live as we pause for a moment to recognize the histories of war and colonization and to work and imagine a world where we have a more fair and equitable distribution of resources. I also, and I'm off script, so my apologies to everyone. I was thinking about this as I was getting ready for the event. As we gather to celebrate this incredible issue of trans feminisms, I also want to acknowledge I'm in Florida, where we are exporting some of the worst rhetoric, legislation, vitriol, and hatred around trans people, gay and lesbian people, people of color, and immigrants in the United States. And we're in a time of an unprecedented number of anti-trans bills. And so people also want to acknowledge what's going on in your state, and particularly what you are doing to stand in solidarity with trans communities and to speak truth to power to our state legislatures and our national legislators. That would be welcome as well. I'll give a call out to Nadine Smith, who's been doing work at Equality Florida since I remember knowing her when we were both very young women. And Nadine and the team at Equality Florida inspires me every day with what they're doing with a really terrible draconian legislature. So I invite you to put that into the chat as well, just to acknowledge the time that we're in. And I know that we will get through it because there are always people on our events and involved in Sinister Wisdom who are around in Florida during the Johns Commission, which happened during the 1960s, and also people who were working in Florida and doing activism during the Anita Bryant issue. So Florida has a long history of this hateful work and also a strong history of progressive resistance to it. So thank you all. We have an hour-long celebration planned. We're going to wrap up around 8 o'clock on the East Coast, including time for our traditional dance number at the end. As always, as you settle in, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sinister Wisdom. Sinister Wisdom is a quarterly journal of lesbian literature and art. It started in 1976 and has been publishing consistently since then. As we have prepared to publish this issue, many people have shared passionate feelings with me about what Sinister Wisdom is and is not. What I can assure you 100% as we barrel towards our 50th anniversary celebration in 2026 is that Sinister Wisdom is many things. She is capacious and curious. They are open-hearted and honest. She is profoundly committed to lesbians, and they are, for the foreseeable future, here to stay. If you are not currently a subscriber to the journal, I encourage you to sign up for a subscription today by going to sinisterwisdom.org/subscribe. And a group of monthly sustainers are vital to Sinister Wisdom's work. If you can give monthly, please sign up as a sustainer at sinisterwisdom.org/sustainers. I send out emails every month when your gift arrives with behind-the-scene details and new information about what we have coming for the journal. Those links are in the chat now. I say it every time we gather together, and every time it is equally true and more profound to me. I appreciate the many ways that lesbians and allies lift up and support the work of Sinister Wisdom. I particularly this evening want to appreciate Red Washburn. Red served on the Sinister Wisdom board for a number of years and was an instigator and co-conspirator of a number of issues, including Sinister Wisdom 110, Dump Trump, and Sinister Wisdom 103, celebrating the Michigan Women's Music Festival. Red also convened the editors of this issue of Sinister Wisdom and worked tirelessly to bring us to this point. Red, thank you for all of your service to Sinister Wisdom and our lesbian communities. I am grateful for your work and your guidance, and I'm so thrilled to celebrate this issue with you and everyone gathered here this evening. A few housekeeping notes before I'm done. Keep your microphones muted throughout the program. If we hear noise from you, we will mute you ourselves. At the end, you can unmute, wave, and cheer and dance. As the program proceeds, if you want to show appreciation for readers, wave your hands at the end of each reading. Use the reaction emojis on Zoom. Feel free to test them now. Also, as you're all doing, light up the chat on Zoom. Some of the best things from our event are often happening in the chat. If you need technical assistance this evening, chat with Sierra. They are on tap for technical assistance and will help you in whatever way they can. We are recording the event and we'll make it available starting tomorrow or Thursday at sinisterwisdom.org/SW128. So this evening's program will unfold in 3 parts. We begin with some readings from the issue. Then we have a roundtable of editors talking about their work in the issue, and we conclude with a few more readers. I'm so excited for the program and to share it all with you. So without further delay, we will begin. We begin with readings from 4 contributors to the issue. First, Diandra Williams. Diandra Williams is a writer and music producer working in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As a writer, she tends to focus on her experiences as a bisexual trans woman growing up, coming out, and transitioning in rural evangelical America. Please join me in welcoming Diandra.
Hello, everybody. Very excited to be reading tonight. I hope you can hear me okay. If you can't, I'll try to figure that out. I'm going to be reading 2 poems. The first one is called Without Foothold. And there's an epigraph from Psalm 69:2 that says, I sink in deep mire where there is no standing. I am come into deep waters where the floods overflow me. Wading deep in the floods, water engulfing, worn out, calling for help. Those who hate me without reason. Those who seek to destroy will always do it without cause. Guilt unhidden, throat parched. Stranger to any family, no children left to estrange. The insults of those you insulted, filling a mental vacuum, like rocks in the wrong hands did to Stephen, or canes to Abel. Head smoking. To smoke is to clutch whatever air you can snatch off catastrophe's doorstep. Cinder blocks heaving with August heat, foundations fractured. It was the neighbor's house caught fire growing up. It was always the neighbor's. Remember that panic at 3 a.m., seeing flames at a distance, the charred roof afterwards. Was it always this delicate, you ask yourself, to watch physics in retrospect? Was it always this biblical? Chaos culling its fuel from molecular dissidence, angel-throated and without foothold across morning's doorstep. And then the second poem I'm going to read, I was at my fiance's house when this happened, and this one is called If You Are Outside, Seat Cover. On April 2nd, 2021, @Breaking News tweeted, U.S. Capitol on lockdown due to security incident, along with footage of a helicopter landing on the Capitol. The title of the poem and the italicized text throughout come from the thread that followed the initial tweet. You can't really see the italics, but anyway. If you are outside, seat cover is one way of coping with uncertainty. I sit on the couch next to you and scroll Twitter as you open up Discord. At North Marshall and North Master, a pencil gets weaponized. Here, in your living room, I pour 2 cups of coffee and study your lips' terse contour. A suspect is in custody. Soon you'll make us both breakfast, and when I ask you how you're feeling, you'll tell me about the articles you've drafted. At least one person shot. Later, on the drive home, I'll focus on smoking my last Southern cut instead of my check engine light. Suspect involved in vehicle ramming. The cost of ramming a vehicle must cover bottom surgery or a decade's HRT. Remember the drive to Virginia when we picked up medication and dog sat, or the porch at my brother's old place when your mouth moved in mine. I respond to your touch, and your touch keeps me going, beyond any shit from the Capitol, beyond grandparents' prayers for a grandson who exists only in scrapbooks. Veins braced for impact, we grip each other's ankles to stay grounded against the next blowout in this desperately paved city. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Diandra. That's wonderful. I'm pleased to invite our next reader, who's one of our international participants joining us from Cambridge in the UK. Ursh Skeet is a 23-year-old butch charity worker writing on the lives of gender nonconforming dykes and the way this interacts with the world around them through personal essays and fiction centering her gay and trans community. She lives in Cambridge, England, as I mentioned, and helps to organize events around there and in London. Please join me in welcoming Ursh.
Hi. I'm going to read a little bit of an essay that I wrote about 20 minutes before submitting it to Sinister Wisdom, so it's kind of rough, but it's very earnest, especially for how I was feeling at the time. It's called Unfolding. Sometimes people say that one of the best things about being lesbian is sharing clothes with your partner. But a lot of us don't have this, for reasons as varied and complex as we are. For my girlfriend and I in particular, the concept of putting two dysphoric dykes in the wrong kind of clothes is not anyone's idea of a good time. The best thing about being in the place we are, though, is the gifting of old clothes. My girlfriend runs a hand through the back of my hair and straightens the collar of a shirt she used to own. I pull the sleeves of a jumper my grandmother gave me down over her hands, or pull the hem over her head. Looks better on her than it ever did on me. Her dark hair shadowing the grey wool is the most natural thing in the world. We have boxes under beds and clogging hallways full of clothes we've outgrown in every possible way. My housemates wear the shirts I've had since I was 12. In turn, I get the men's florals or anything black and white from them. A dress can be offered to several people before it finds the body it fits. An earring can go from familial obligation to a statement piece. It's intimacy. When you can see it go to a good cause, you are free to rid yourself of an old self, hang it in a closet or fold it in a drawer. After a few months, it seems so effortless on someone else you forget it was ever yours, but when you do remember it, it's something good. A reminder of understanding and solidarity. When one of us needs some advice, it might not be good, but they are going to get it. When someone changes their name, it's taken on board as quickly as we can. When one of us needs to go to the bathroom in a public place, we'd never let them go alone. I've been turned away in questions in the women's bathroom. When I text my girlfriend or my friends this, every time they come to help me, despite avoiding these spaces themselves, I've never felt safer. I'm safer in my relationships. I explain myself by choice because I want to further the understanding that lies beneath it, not because I cannot be myself there. These are places of home, of soft hands that will cut my hair for me, and voices that will compliment my cooking, or laughter at a bad joke. This is what dyke spaces are and should be, places of self-exploration, of solidarity, of love. A bed where arms can hold a body saying nothing of who possesses it except that they are beautiful, where I can look at clothes I used to wear with happiness instead of shame, this part of me recognized and folded away as memory. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ursh. A pleasure to hear you read. Joining us next is Alison Lubar. Alison teaches high school English by day and yoga by night. They are a queer, non-binary, mixed-race femme whose life work, aside from wordsmithing, has evolved into bringing mindfulness practices and sometimes even poetry to young people. Please join me in welcoming Alison.
Thank you so much for having me here. I just am full. I just want to cry. I'm just so full of joy at everyone who's here. Thank you so much. I have two poems. They're both in this incredible issue. The first is called Apothexis. It's like apotheosis, and I teach like the hero's journey, but apotheosis becoming godlike. But I took the theo, that O, that that and replaced it with an X. So more chrysalis than prison, this body holds multitudes. Uncloseted poets' songs slip through follicles and test the air as metaphysical antennae. This is how the non-binary body swells in space, pullulates atmospheric, closed loop, infinite. It is not girl. It is not woman. It is not desirable pinnacle and cavern to be pulled or filled. I tried this once. My own barbed wire in 14 gauge, a mechanical puzzle of paperclip tangles. I am unthreaded and healed. Holes sealed by their own regenesis, cellular miracles, empyrean and unpierced, each morning reborn. Fuck mornings. Each geodesic aggregate of hexagonated snakeskin becomes faceted moonstone. Each nascent moment bursts and unfurls this body in world, inner world. Thank you. And my second piece is called New Dress as Transmutation. We meet in the hallway mirror first. This twin brims with silk perennials to soothe and mute. Sashiko chrysanthemums and cruel magnolias permit a botanical mask to wrap this soft body in a blur of petals when I want quills and a stinger. What is the sartorial equivalent of fangs? Lips unfurl a forked tongue and a spread of needled stiletto teeth like a tool shed buzzsaw, like ivory fence posts. Sudden wings burst polyester. I cackle throat song to the ceiling. The pitch shatters reflection to shards. Shreds I explode through broken bedroom windows. I see the garden below. Shadow roses as I go. A final bellow sets the house on fire. I leave forever, naked, bold, unafraid. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison. You'll want to check out the chat people had. There was one line that just set everyone on fire. Thank you to our readers for getting us started with these wonderful offerings. Right now, I'm going to invite 3 members of the editorial collective to join, and they're going to read. Gregory is going to start out reading from the editor notes, and then we're going to talk as a group about the process of editing this issue. And I also note we have a couple other editors here, so we do have space if you would like to be added to the roundtable and talk a little bit about working on this issue. Just private message me or Sierra. Sierra has the handle Sinister Wisdom on the PMs. So first of all, I welcome Red Washburn, as I said, a former board member of Sinister Wisdom and professor of English and director of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at CUNY Kingsborough. So Red is the first person on our panel here. Cassidy Scanlon is a former intern at Sinister Wisdom. She was based here in Florida. We had many fun afternoons together at the Sinister Wisdom office, and she has now moved north to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and joins us from there. Sara Youngblood Gregory is a Sinister Wisdom board member currently, a freelance journalist, and a poet. And we're going to begin this roundtable with Sara reading a little bit from I think a couple parts of the journal, and then I have some questions that I will pose to our roundtable members. So Sara.
Hi, thanks, Julie. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great, cool. So yeah, I just wanted to read just a few little snippets from the issue that I thought were beautiful and might inform our conversation for people who haven't read the issue yet. Getting at, I think, the title a little bit, the relationship between transness and feminism and lesbianism. So I hope what I read will speak to that a little bit. The first thing that I'm reading is, it's a blessing, actually. It's a poem from Joe, who'll be reading later on as well. But this poem is called Transgender Blessing. Filled past the brim, this world overflows with too much evil, terror, goodness, beauty, joy, heartbreak. Hold on. Stay with it. Let go. Pray. Pray open. Pray open something. Pray open something is. Pray open something is shifting. Pray open something is shifting. Bless you in your modified freedom. Bless you in your quizzical eyes. Bless you in your tangential beauty. So the second thing is just a really short excerpt from a wonderful Susan Stryker piece, which is on page 92 for those of you who have the issue. It's called On Groundlessness, Transphobic Feminism, Gender Ideology, Transfeminist Critique. Little excerpt. Manifesting the realness of our identities is what we trans people do, and we can bring the world along with us. This is our superpower, our burden, our necessity, our gift. And this is what transpires now. New realities, emergent trans realities, flowing across the gap that separates actuality from desire, flowing from what is to what will be. Something has already shifted, something tectonic, climactic. We see the evidence around us as surely as the continents grindingly adjust their placement, as surely as new patterns of earth, air, fire, and water arrange themselves across the planet's warming surface. Gender, a vast, impersonal social apparatus that whispers the secrets of our identity into our ears and places us with our kind. Gender itself has changed, is changing still, is changing us, all of us, and we in turn change it. Okay, and finally, this is another really small excerpt from on page 246, Decolonial Rearticulations, a Transwomanist Arab Roundtable Dialogue. And this is a really just a little small quote from Rasha Abdul Hadi. And they say, when I think about trans, non-binary, and cis lesbian lineages and trans feminist lineages as a whole, I remember communities that cared for each other when little help or model was available elsewhere, in family, community, or political/organizing spaces. I hope we never lose the radical potential of lesbian and trans autonomous spaces. We cannot afford to cede these technologies for self-determination to white supremacist, trans exclusionary reactionaries who want to colonize and neutralize their liberatory potential. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. So I want to start by inviting each of you to talk a little bit about what brought you to work on this particular issue of Sinister Wisdom and what you enjoyed most about the process. Of course, always part of my agenda is to be an advertisement for future editors of the journal, but tell us a little bit about what spoke to you about this issue and what you really valued in working on it.
Yeah, I guess I could start. First off, I want to thank Julie for doing this issue and for the editorial board of Sinister Wisdom for supporting it. And Julie's been doing work for a decade with Sinister Wisdom, and it's been really, really important to do this work, but also it's incredibly brave and bold, important and essential to do this particular issue on trans feminism. So thank you so much, Julie. I definitely appreciate your work. So what brought me to do this issue? I've been doing this work for 20 years. I'm starting to feel old, but when I was at SUNY New Paltz, we created a Transforming Feminism Conference, a collective of us through the Women and Gender Studies program at the time that now is Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies department. So watching that grow, we did that conference for a number of years to kind of bring together lesbian, queer, and feminist communities, not necessarily see them as jettisoned, but as part of the same struggle, the same conversation, that the spectrum of difference looked, was shaped in a different way, but the challenges to power and inequality were the same. Also thinking about the intersections of other identities, and we tried to do that in this issue. I'll speak for myself to be more inclusive of different identities, including ability and race and ethnicity and age and religion, and really try to include as many voices as possible. So this is not new work for me. When I was on the board of Sinister Wisdom, as Julie mentioned, I did an issue with many wonderful people on Michigan. Yeah, so I did that issue and was very much involved in lesbian and separatist communities. And I know many people here, particularly I'm thinking about some of the conversations I've had with Chris, one of the editors of this issue, about the importance of those communities, and also some of the work that needs to be done in these communities to keep building the communities. I also did an issue in Dumb Trump where we really looked at the importance of voice and resistance. And I did an issue on the Lesbian History Archives, and I'm very much supportive of the work of the Lesbian History Archives. And the Lesbian History Archives in particular has done a lot of work to really try and make more space for gender nonconforming, non-binary trans folks, even just by having buttons and signs in the building. So I think a lot of these spaces are really trying to maintain voices as center, lesbian, queer voices as center, and also try to include as many people in the conversation instead of people seeing it as an issue where they're going to lose autonomy and lose representation, voice, and freedom in a space. So yeah, I mean, this issue is really important to me. I love Sinister Wisdom, and there's been many great issues. In particular, I really love the piece, and no pressure, but the piece that Shireen and Marcy did, I know Shireen is here, was one of my favorites, really kind of looking at the connections between ancestry and legacies of resistance. I really loved the Arab Roundtable that Ahimsa did. It's a wonderful piece. There's so many pieces to choose from in this book. I love TC's poetry and Morgan's photography. I love the Susan Stryker essay, which is really just kind of bringing it all together. Pauline's work is really incredible. I'm so delighted that Joe is going to read today. But it's been, really incredible to work with folks. I just want to do a shout out, even though Julia's already mentioned them, to Talia, to Marcy, to Claudia Sofia, who should be joining us later, to Cecilia, to Chris, to Shireen, to Nadine, to Cassidy, to Kata, to Fitch, and to Sarah, and to everyone who has supported this issue.
Thank you for all that, Red. I would say the thing that I enjoyed most on this issue is the first time I got to be an editor in Sinister Wisdom. As Julie mentioned, I did some intern work for a couple years, and that was really awesome. And also, shout out to Sarah, who introduced me to Sinister Wisdom and introduced my contact to Julie as well. So really big honor to be able to work with such an amazing team of editors, and also to get so many amazing contributions. And that spans so many different visual and writing, and there's just really awesome mediums in this issue. And I feel like it reflects sort of the expansiveness and the diversity of transness and of non-binary and gender non-conforming communities. I think one thing that really sticks out to me in this process is that through the process of editing this, I realized myself that I'm non-binary and leaning in the trans masculine spectrum. So I think that's really cool how the power of art and community can help me realize and sort out my identity and how I relate to myself and my gender as well. So just wanted to say that it was just, I think, an honor, and also really cool to be able to see this issue after so many years of working on it. I think it's just an amazing experience. So again, thank you to everybody who's worked on it.
Claudia Sofia has joined us. Hello, welcome. I am going to give your brief one line. Claudia Sofia Garriga-Lopez is a professor of queer and trans Latinx studies in the Department of Multicultural and Gender Studies at California State University in Chico. And Claudia Sofia, people are Red has gone already, and I think you heard part of Cassidy. People are talking about how they came to work on this issue and what pieces are particularly meaningful to them. So we can have Sara speak next, and then you join in after that. So you have a moment to collect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll jump in. I'm thrilled, and I think Cassidy was saying this a little bit too, just all of the different genres that have gone into this. It's very visual. It feels like, I don't know, there's so much texture to reading the issue, which I really love. There's portraits, there's comics, there's written work of all different genres. That really thrills me because it feels like it pushes genre and gender, I think, in really fun, challenging ways. And aside from what's actually in the book too, I'm most thrilled that this is going into people's hands right now. This has taken, this didn't happen overnight. This was a few years of work to, from red to, kind of corralling all of us and now being in print. I'm really thrilled that people are going to be able to experience this issue, whether it's, their first issue of Sinister Wisdom that they've seen or their 100th. It comes at a really important time. As Julie was talking about in the intro, it feels really important to me that this is coming out of Florida right now, which is where I'm from, my home state. And I think it's going to speak to a lot of people. I think a lot of people are going to feel seen by this issue, and they're going to feel comforted. I think some people are going to feel challenged and thrilled, and that is such a gratifying feeling for me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claudia. It's a pleasure to join you tonight. And I really resonated with what Cassidy was saying about how trans feminism led me to a greater self-understanding as a gender non-binary person, and sort of seeing my own process of sort of getting there. It didn't quite happen in this issue, but it happened through my engagement with trans feminism. And to also say that just working with this collective of co-editors was amazing. It's been so great to sort of read through the entire book and just see the incredible diversity of the work that's there. Julie, I really enjoyed reading your intro and thinking about the sort of trajectory of Sinister Wisdom as a trans feminist publication. And like Red, I also felt that Susan Stryker's piece on groundlessness was really potent in the sense of reaffirming for me my place within trans feminism, and the importance of that contribution as somebody who's not trans, unless you think of gender non-binary as trans, which I'm open to, but I think it's also important to sort of recognize that that isn't exactly my experience. So yeah, I'm honored to be a part of this group. Thank you, Red, for the invitation and for putting together this amazing collection. And I'm especially drawn to the poem by Raquel Salas Rivera, "The Sea Isn't a Lack of Mountain and Neither Am I," which I'll be sharing with you all a little later. This was also the occasion for my first published poem in like 25 years or something like that. So thank you also for inviting me to be able to be a part of that. And yeah, that's sort of what I have to say. It was really a labor of love and a very gratifying experience to be a part of this co-editorial group. And as Sara was saying, it comes at such an important moment. Trans people are very literally under attack. Feminism is very literally under attack. And this is one of our sort of ways of gathering our strength collectively to find ways to resist that. So I'm really grateful to be able to be a part of this. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much. I was messaging with Shireen, and I'm hoping that Shireen might be willing to come on for a moment, which means Sierra would need to spotlight Shireen. I'm hoping, Shireen, you might just say a couple words about your piece with Marcy, who I plan these dates very far in advance, and Marcy, for part of their work, prepares taxes. And everyone knows what day this is. And so Marcy could not be with us for obvious reasons. But Shireen, are you willing, there you are. Would you say a couple words about the piece you did with Marcy and give us a little brief introduction as well?
Sure. Thank you, Julie. This is a little unexpected. I was not expecting to be on camera right now, but here I am. I'm so delighted to be here. It's such an emotional and beautiful launch. And just to echo Claudia Sofia's earlier words, it was such a delight, an incredible honor to work with this incredible collective. And I just feel like there was so much mutual love and solidarity among us. And Marcy is really the person who invited me to be part of this to start out. And so it is too bad that Marcy is not here, but of course they're doing taxes for all of the artists and freelancers in New York. So hooray. So writing that piece with Marcy was an absolute joy. We decided to frame it as a conversation because really so much of what we do is have these conversations about these intense ponderings. And so this is just an extension of that. And I hope that you enjoy it. If anybody has any questions or wants to reach out, that would be great. And we can discuss it more later. There's so much to say, I think, on the subject of finding kinship and ancestry and creating narratives around our ancestries as queer people of color and trans people of color and non-binary people of color. And so it was just really exciting to work on that piece with Marcy. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Shireen. And I think that's one of the pieces that I find most powerful about reading this, and every reading that I've done of the issue, is the ways that I think this issue is really helping us piece together a genealogy around lesbian of color thought, really, that started in the 1970s, in part with Combahee River Collective, but even before that, and extending through this bridge called My Back, the work of both Cherie Moraga and Gloria Anzaldúa. And I think it gets distilled, Shireen, in your piece with Marcy, also in the Arab American Roundtable. You're going to hear from Joe Kadi a little later. But that's the Arab American Queer Roundtable is one of the first times I've sort of read a collection of voices really talking and thinking about that. And they also really think about the work and the genealogy that comes from lesbians of color, many of whom were published in the pages of Sinister Wisdom. So I just like to lift up that I do think that's a really important contribution of this issue. And leading into that, now Claudia is going to read to us a little bit from the issue as a way to close out our roundtable here before we turn to our other readings. So Sierra's unspotlighting everyone. We'll just have Claudia and they will read for us.
Thank you, Julie. No waves of feminism, only rainfall, swelling at the feet of mango trees and setting off cricket disco parties. Most droplets have some unexamined transphobia, but TERFs stand out for their ideological commitment to that shit. That was mine. And here comes the sea isn't a lack of mountain, and neither am I. To be the orange orchids, the Denny's at 4 after the hangeo, between fingers a blunt, on the fingertips the 787, but not Los Pinos. To be 4 orchids that get down in the shade, between fingers of the gate's protective hand, on tiptoes peeping into interiors, definitely playing pool en la bosque, but not the forest. termites in the house of those who do not understand cement or the tropics, but not the cabin, penetration of the card's blade in the motel, through and the worst sex, intermittent of precipices, but not unequal distribution, muñozista planning, recreation in park or museums, in room, buried, to be the infestation of maneuvers, to survive survival, but not the ludic if it's church, or the church if it doesn't have a plaza, or the plaza is if the cafe is closed, to close, but not all the way, the law, not the labor, yes and no, to light with shadow, the illuminated, not the helicopters, yes, the maple seeds, confession without sabrosura, but not sin. If I expect sin from salvation, not salvation, but yes, saved.
Thank you so much. Before we move into our final readings, Red just texted me, and I want to see that one of the things that's that's powerful and striking about this issue is the artwork that is included in it. And two of the editors who are here this evening who really worked on that, and I apologize if I get their names wrong, are Chris Gray and Catalina and Catalina, that's Schleibener. And I think I may be pronouncing that wrong, and I do apologize. I want to see if Chris and Catalina want to just come on screen for a moment or two and talk a bit about curating that work. This is unanticipated. And yet here we are just projecting you on the large screen. There's Chris and Kata. So wave and forgive me and say a few words about your work as the closing of this editor section, if you would indulge.
Can you hear me? Oops. I'm with my phone and the computer.
It's a little echoey.
Bit of an echo, so maybe put one of those on mute.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. Wait a second. Better?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. The camera of my computer wasn't working. I don't know. This was great. It was a really long process. And I don't know much to say. I wasn't prepared. I'm in the middle of work also, but I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, it was a lot of conversation with Chris and with the rest of the team. And it was great. It was a great process.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Chris, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would say, hi, everyone. This is Chris. I'd say my favorite way to hang out with my friends these days is to do projects together. So the duration of this work that we did was over a year. I mean, Red, when did you get in touch with us? It was a while. So I really appreciate that. I'm a durational performance artist, so it's in my wheelhouse. And it also really touched me to be able to work alongside other co-editors who I admire and adore, and in many cases idolize. So it's put me also in touch with a lot of brand new work and new artists who I wasn't familiar with. So I feel like I've been able to grow through this project and learn a lot, to expand community, to reconnect to folks who are aligned. And as always, come together around visual and literary art to create communities of affinity under the greatest duress, which is where we found ourselves culturally and politically and historically. So it's a gift to be able to work this way, and I hope that it will be a gift to our readers and extended community as well. And thank you so much to Red, to all the rest of the co-editors, and Julie, Sarah, everyone from Sinister Wisdom. It's just been really a magical project to work on.
Thank you. Thank you both for indulging us in this last minute call out. I really appreciate it. We have 3 more readers this evening. First, I'd like to welcome E.F. Schraeder. E.F. Schraeder is the author of the queer Gothic novella Liar, Memoir of a Haunting, the story collection Ghastly Tales of Gaiety and Greed, and 2 poetry chapbooks. E.F. will not be on video, so tune in with your ears, and please join me in welcoming E.F.
Hi, and thank you. First, it's just such an honor to join everyone tonight, and I just couldn't be more happy. So thanks for everyone, all your hard work on this issue, if you've worked on it, and thank you to everyone else for joining. I'll be reading 2 poems that are included. And the first is called In the Absence of Humankind. I began as a quiet argument and ended with fists. I learned the vacancy of bodies like sheet music, sounding out chords and silences on the piano, finger gap sprinting across octaves, slipping sour notes into harmonies, how everything bursts from touch. A child of firsts and teeth, I was a bruised next, who later became a child of 2 faces, fierce, staggering through trees. I breathed punches, held my breath to contain the howl. I was never delicate like a balloon, but always slipped from clenched hands. Nothing remains of those old selves. Never attempt this trick alone. Do not look while I change. Human or wolf, nothing escapes. Everything that's wild in me still wants to run away. And thank you. The second poem I'll be reading is called Transhuman. First, I swam like a salmon, gills pulsing, my back a silver pitch pushing upstream. Air couldn't hold me. A gasp swallows everything. Mouthfuls of dirty water. I am not incomplete. We swarm together, journey alone. I am telling you something about what it means to be more and less than you are. Not just human, beyond, knowing nothing like you exists. Not incomplete, but whole. I'm fish and river, life source, mostly water, like earth. Freedom swims warm in the skin, not a human experience, not an inhuman experience. A fish knows things. A fish sees. Thank you.
Thank you so much, E.F. Our next reader is Samantha Sapp. Samantha is an English teacher and recent graduate from the University of Central Florida. She is passionate about Southern Gothic and LGBTQ plus writing. Please join me in welcoming Samantha.
Hey all, I've never done nothing like this before, so excuse the nerves. This is just an excerpt from an essay I wrote. We left their home and traveled down slow state highways, carving our way ever southward like the Mobile to Nassau River. Even in winter, South Alabama was all red clay that still seemed to hold the anger and heat of southern summers. We passed through a little town called Flomaton on the state border, where so much of my family had lived just a couple generations ago. We stopped so I could go to a gas station bathroom. I went into the men's room and almost puked in a stall. There were homophobic slurs etched into the peeling white paint of the stall doors. When we got to my parents' place, I traded in my womanhood for men's flannel and shame. I was out to my family, but I was not to be out when I was there. It would ruin the holiday after all, and I'd already taken their perfect son away from them. I wore my engagement ring, but I did not tell them I was engaged. They did not ask about it either. There were a lot of things we didn't talk about. Shame sat thick and muddy in us all that winter. It was the same Southern shame that ached in your bones when you learned as a little kid that the South you were told to have so much pride for did not win the Civil War, and that the South had fought for all the wrong reasons. It was the same Southern shame that ate at your heart when you learned that your beloved great-granddaddy had been in the KKK. It was a cool, slow, seeping kind of shame, like rotted swamp water slipping through cypress roots. When my parents gave me more men's flannel for Christmas, I cried. We did not talk much the rest of the trip, and afterward I told my mother I wasn't going to come back home unless I could come as myself. She said I'd best wait before coming back home then, because they weren't ready to have me as myself. But that was the last time I ever pretended to be a man, but it wasn't the last time I went home. When the earth thawed and summer came, my fiance did a summer research program at Cornell. So in August, I flew up to meet her. We wound our way down from New York on sleepy highways that etched through the very same Appalachia we got engaged in. I decided I was going to visit my family, and I was going to do it as the woman I was, regardless of if they were ready for me. But when I stepped into that house, no one knew what to do with me. It was awkward and above all else, painful. I finally told my mom that we were engaged. I declined to mention that we had gotten engaged last winter, though. She was happy for me until I'd mentioned I was thinking about taking my fiance's name when we got married. She did not like that news, even though she had been married twice and changed her name both times. She cried. On the screen porch with beers in hand, we sat down with my father for a conversation. My father was a retired military man from small town North Florida, and when I'd come out to him, he pledged to never refer to me by the right name. My fiance held my shaking hands. I swallowed my heart down into my chest and finally managed to get the words out. Dad, we're engaged, I told him. I did not tell him we'd been engaged for over 8 months either. My father squinted with a pained look of confusion, a lot like how he gets when he dimly realizes that there's no more wine at the bottom of the bottle. The fog seemed to roll through his mind, and I couldn't tell if he was deep in thought or just in acute shock. But finally, after blinking several times, he managed to say something. Wasn't someone supposed to ask someone? He asked. He looked to my fiance like a Joe in headlights. She stared back at me the same. Well, he prodded. I coughed. It's not the 1900s anymore. Yes, but it's a tradition, and some traditions are good, he said, his tone making it clear that he thought we had no respect for tradition at all. I don't know how it's supposed to work in a relationship like this, but things are going to be hard for you. And he rambled on for several minutes on tangents I don't remember. I was just stunned that this man who told me flat out he would never seen as a woman had expected my female fiance to ask him for my hand in marriage because of tradition. What the actual fuck? That's all I got.
Samantha, thank you so much for that lovely story. Our final reader is Joe Kadi. Joe Kadi is a disabled trans man who writes regularly for Mizna, prose, poetry, and art exploring Arab America. A link for Mizna was dropped into the chat earlier, so scroll back for that. Joe teaches in the Gender and Sexuality Studies program at the University of Calgary. Joe's new book, The Great Loss of the 20th Century, is now available, and you can order it from his website. Please join me in welcoming Joe.
Thank you, Julie. And thanks to everyone who worked on this issue. It is such a strong issue. I was very moved as I read through it. I'm so grateful to be part of it, and I'm one of the folks here who's had a long time connection with Sinister Wisdom, both now but pre-transition as well. So it's kind of a great thing that this is happening tonight. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm here from Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and contemporary lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy, and I'm kind of on the northern part of Turtle Island, if you can think of me there. So I'm reading the last section of the essay that is in the journal. It's an essay about my gender transition from female to male. And I'm reading the last section, and I'm talking about a man I had just met, Tim, who's part of the search and rescue team in Alberta, where I live. And when somebody's part of the search and rescue team, they're in great shape, is basically the point, which will become clear as I read this. So thank you. I grew more relaxed after a few puffs on my poorly rolled joint. Tim showed no effect from the 4 beers he imbibed from his favorite local brewery. At one point, after a pause in the conversation, I took note of the beauty of the night sky and sighed heavily. "What's that about?" Tim asked. I told him that even when seeing the beauty of the natural world, I sometimes find it difficult to forget the grim reality of global warming and climate chaos. It was as if Tim had been waiting for the door to open. He poured forth his own observations, honed in the way that only someone who spends inordinate time in the back country can do. He talked about receding glaciers, fewer predators, damage to fragile ecosystems done by mountain bikers and ATV users, fewer wildflowers in his favorite meadows. Underneath it all, the heartbreaking love, the devastating love that all environmentalists carry with us. Tim continued, "We were out for a training week in Jasper National Park." Translation: a team of unbelievably fit people were hiking daily at a ridiculously rapid pace while carrying massive backpacks. I woke up early and wandered down to the meadow I had noticed the night before. The sun was just coming up. Tim leaned forward. There were 2 wolf cubs playing, jumping, biting, squirming, these soft balls of fluff, the cutest things. The mother sat there gazing at them, love written all over her face. I flashed back to Aldo Leopold's description of the dying wolf who glared hatefully at the humans present. I said, "Sounds like a magical moment." "Exactly," said Tim, "magic in the heart." Another way to describe love. If everyone felt that, we could save the planet. Did he say it? Did I? A shooting star fell across the sky and we both inhaled audibly. And then Tim vocalized. "Some days," he said wistfully, "I find myself thinking, what's a man to do?" "That's the question," I answered truthfully, as I looked from him to the sky and back again. What's a man to do? I will likely spend the remainder of my life attempting to answer that question. Several things are already clear, thanks to my own gender journey, which I also describe as my spiritual journey. What's a man to do? Pay attention to self and others. Trust and follow the inner voice that comes from heeding the still point. Claim and proclaim the naked truth. I like men. Act in ways that reflect deep love for the planet and all of its creatures. Feel the magic in the heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. And thank you to everyone who read this evening, spoke this evening, and joined us. If you do not already have your copy of Sinister Wisdom 128 Trans Feminism and you are a subscriber, it's winging its way to you. If you don't have it in the next 4 or 5 days, email me and I'll send you a replacement copy. If you want to order a copy, please order one online at sinisterwisdom.org. /SW128. The video from this evening's event will be available at our website tomorrow or Thursday. Sierra will put the link into the chat to access that. This is, I am sad to report, our last Zoom event of the season. We will have an in-person reading at the San Francisco Public Library in May with other contributors to Sinister Wisdom 128. And we will have a full schedule for 2023-2024 beginning in August. So stay tuned to your emails for that full schedule. We have great issues coming next year, and I already have some great events in the